What's up, guys? John Sonmez here from simpleprogrammer.com, and today we're going to be talking about imposter syndrome. All right, this is something that just about every developer that I've ever talked to has faced and had to deal with in some regard. In fact, most developers I talk to are still dealing with imposter syndrome, and they're not able to get over it. Okay, and so I want to talk about this and give you some solutions, some ways that you can really overcome imposter syndrome, and really kind of dissect what is imposter syndrome, why do you feel this way, and most importantly, give you the assurance that you're not alone in this, right? You know, even myself, I have experienced imposter syndrome. I still, to some degree, experience it, right? I've been a developer for 25 years, and I've had a lot of success in my career. I've published 50 Pluralsight courses, made millions of dollars from my programming and technical knowledge. I've published books. I've got my Complete Software Developer Career Guide. This is 800-page book that I've written and self-published myself, and made $1 million from this one book. 300,000 copies, right? I've spoken on stages and given keynotes, and still at times I have to remind myself of all of this stuff, because I can start to feel like, oh, well, who are you, John? Who are you to make a video or to create content and to share your story with people on the internet, right? And so it's something that we're all susceptible to. But I want to tell you about how I overcame imposter syndrome, how I've helped a lot of the guys that I've worked with. I've been coaching guys for 12 years in the developer space, but how I've helped them overcome imposter syndrome and kind of really what is causing this. So first of all, let's talk about what's causing imposter syndrome. Why do you feel imposter syndrome? Why does just about every developer that I know feel this way? The biggest thing about imposter syndrome is, I think it comes from just understanding and knowing how much there is out there. Right? As a developer, there are so many frameworks, so many programming languages, so many technologies, so much stuff that you feel like you should know or you could know. But the reality is that you can't know all that stuff. But because there's so much to our field, because there's so much involved, it feels like you should know all this stuff. And when you look around and you see other developers, sometimes they appear to you to be more competent. It appears that they know more than you do, and that they know all this stuff, right? And so you kind of get this impression that you're just faking it, right? Maybe you just feel like, okay, well, I don't really, I have to go and look up the API documentation. I can't just code this from scratch. And you feel like maybe other developers, that's not the case. But what I can tell you is that it is the case, right? Most developers are struggling with this exact same thing. And you might have some area of expertise that someone would look up to you and they would say, oh, wow, you know all this information. I don't know this information. I'm the imposter, right? So that's where kind of the imposter syndrome comes from. It's just this feeling like you don't know it all. Which is true. You don't know it all, and you can't know it all, and that you're expected to know it all, right? That's where that really comes from, okay? And the big thing about this, if you want to overcome imposter syndrome, is you have to first recognize that it's not possible to know all these things, right? You can become a good developer by being able to learn the things that you need to know on the fly, right? I call it just-in-time learning. This is something that is super important. But what I'm going to tell you more than anything else, right, as far as overcoming imposter syndrome, is that you're never really going to truly overcome this feeling, because you're never going to hit this point where you actually do know it all. And that's a good thing, right? Because if you felt like you knew it all, you would probably be arrogant and not exactly a fun person to work with, right? However, what I can tell you this is that if you push through anyway and you take action despite feeling like an imposter, that's going to be the number one cure for imposter syndrome, right? So if I go back and I look at my career, right, I remember when, back in the day when I didn't have a brand, I didn't have a blog, or I hadn't written any books or spoken on any stages or anything like that. I used to idolize developers like Bob Martin. Okay, he was like one of my heroes, right? I remember reading Clean Code and Code Complete, Steve McConnell, right? I emailed him one day, and he responded to me, and I was so excited about that, right? And I'd idolized these guys, these developers that were famous developers, and I definitely felt like an imposter. And one day, I just decided that I was, even though I felt like an imposter, I was going to take action. I was going to start my blog, and so I started my blog, simpleprogrammer.com, and I just started writing. And in fact, I didn't even write from my own authority. I started by writing about what I was reading in books. I talked about what Steve McConnell was saying in Code Complete. I talked about what Bob Martin was saying in his books, in Clean Code, and in his prior books to that. And I started presenting these ideas, and I started saying, hey, well, this is what I read, and I agree with this, and this makes sense to me. And little by little, what ended up happening was, even though it was really, really scary for me to do that, I started to gain some traction. People started listening to what I had to say, and I essentially took my own seat at the table, right? And so the thing is that you're probably already qualified enough to do this. You're probably, you see maybe other developers that are speaking on stage, or that have YouTube channels, or maybe they have a podcast, and you think, oh, well, they're so much higher than me, right? They know so much more than me. It's not the case. I promise you, it's really not the case, right? If you just take the action, if you just take the step, if you just take your seat at the table, all of a sudden, what you're going to find is that you're going to belong there. Right? And that's what happened to me. I can promise you that I did not feel like I belonged at the table. I did not in any way. In fact, there's still people that will say, John, you don't belong at the table. That's fine. Leave a nasty comment below. I don't care anymore, because I've already proven enough to myself. I've done things that I never thought would be possible in my life, right? Building a brand, putting myself out there, and forcing myself to overcome and push through this imposter syndrome has been the best thing that I've done in my life, because it has afforded me so many opportunities in life, given me things that I never thought I'd ever be able to accomplish and do, right? I never thought I'd be able to speak on a stage. I never thought that I'd have a YouTube channel that people would subscribe and listen to what I have to say. I never thought I'd write a book and become an author, right? These are all things that, if I let imposter syndrome hold me back, it would have kept me from ever doing these things in my life. And so what I would say to you is this, right? If you're struggling with imposter syndrome, and you probably are, and that's fine, and most developers are, recognize, number one, that you're not alone. You're not, okay? Number two, I would tell you this, is that it's never going to go away completely. In fact, the only way that it's really going to go away is if you ignore it and you push on. You have to take action, right? If you start taking action instead of letting imposter syndrome control you, you're going to pretty soon find that you are qualified, you are good enough, that you have something valuable to give to this world and to teach other people. And even though you might not be perfect, even though you might not know everything, you have valuable skills, and you're learning and growing, and people will value that. Some people will be haters on the internet. That's going to happen. But I can promise you that if you don't take action, if you just continue to allow imposter syndrome to keep you from doing the thing that you want to do, maybe it's making a YouTube channel, or maybe it's creating a blog or website, or posting on LinkedIn, or writing that book. If you allow imposter syndrome to keep you from doing that, then you're never going to see what your full potential is in life. Now, if you want some help with building out your brand and getting over imposter syndrome, I have developed a program I call Rockstar Developer University, where I teach developers how to build their personal brands. I've been doing this for the last 12 years with my one-on-one coaching clients, but I'd love to see if you'd be a good fit for this. It's something that I can help you with. There's a link down below this video. Just click that if you want to check it out and see if Rockstar Developer University is something that could help you.